episode of the Granby Journal. I'm here at the Public Safety Complex, with Chief of Police, Chief Alan Wishart. And we're going to talk today about the Granby Police Department. Morning, Chief.
Morning, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today about our police department. Maybe you could give me a little history about the Granby Police Department, just so we can have a sense of where we've been before we talk about where we're going.
Sure, I think probably the biggest thing that the public should know about the police department is we are staffed 24 hours a day by at least 3 people. In this building, along with the fire department, under the police department sort of umbrella, we have a dispatcher, a 911 emergency medical dispatch trained dispatcher in the building 24/7. So basically what that means, anybody who calls 911 in Granby, unless they call from a cell phone, it gets routed to this building. So there's always one dispatcher in dispatch. We also have 9 full-time officers and 15 part-time officers. And the department has always maintained a fairly large amount of part-time officers. Those part-time officers work at least one shift a week and often fill in for full-time officers when they take days off or they're sick or vacation, things like that. So we have a combination of both dispatchers, full-time police officers, and part-time police officers. And that's always been, in the recent history, our makeup, so to speak of. And I think that's one of the things that maybe some of the people in the community don't know.
That's very interesting. Maybe you could tell us a bit about how a part-time officer is trained, or how they maintain their training, and the same for your full-time officers. How does one become a police officer in Granby, Massachusetts?
Well, initially, we maintain an auxiliary police force, which is basically a volunteer organization. And all of our officers start from the auxiliary position. And that gives us an opportunity to do a couple of things. First of all, it allows them the opportunity to attend the Reserve Intermittent Police Academy, which allows them or qualifies them to be a part-time police officer anywhere in the state. From that, traditionally, we've hired our dispatchers for the most part. We've also hired all of our part-time officers from that auxiliary force. So the part-time or Reserve Intermittent Police Academy is basically 2 or 3 days a week. It's usually about 6 months. They've upped the number of hours that the academy, the Reserve Intermittent Academy is. So I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember the exact number of hours. But they cover criminal law, constitutional law, basically all of the areas for the most part that a full-time police officer would, just in a different environment. It's more on a part-time basis. It's evenings, it's on a weekend, whereas the full-time police officers go to a 6-month academy. That is basically their job for 6 months, 5 days a week, everything from criminal law to defensive driving. While they are very different, they cover the same topics, just in a different format.
Okay, and currency for the force. How do people maintain their currency?
Well, we have several areas of training that we have to maintain. For instance, CPR and first responder training. We have to maintain firearms proficiency training. We also have to, remain current with the criminal law, constitutional law, and things of that nature. Also, one of the biggest things, and the tough part is that, and it's always great to have increased training. The problem is sometimes there's training mandates, not even sometimes, I would say more often than not, there's training mandates, but there's no funding to take care of the training. So we have to really look at innovative ways to get our people trained. We've relied a lot on internet-based, web-based training through the Mass Police Training Council. We also, one of the other big things that we have to do now with the emergency medical dispatch regulations through the State 911 Department, there's a large amount of increased training in the area of dispatch. Specifically around emergency medical dispatch procedures, and also There's another 16-hour mandated in-service training that we have to maintain with the dispatchers. So to answer your question more specifically, part-time officers and full-time officers, there are certain core things that they have to do every year. CPR, first responder, firearms training and qualifications. There's been increases in that. And because our officers also work in dispatch, we utilize them in there as well. They are also subject to those training requirements as well. A lot of the training that comes through that we're mandated for the 911 portion of our training, there are grants that we get for that, which helps defray some of the costs. But the other training, we're lucky enough that we have in-house instructors that are trained through the Police Training Council, and that we are able to provide most of that training ourselves.
Would the training for our police force be different from that in a big city?
Well, again, the core training would not be the firearms training. They may do it a little bit differently, but they still have the same requirements. I think the training that you would see that would be different would be they obviously deal with different problems than we do. Every jurisdiction has some other sort of priority that they have to deal with, and those are the types of trainings that you might see a bit differently. For instance, if a certain district in a city had to deal with a large drug problem or a gang problem, you would see increased training in those areas that you may not see here.
Yeah.
So there'll be jurisdictional different types of training focuses based on what the problem that they're trying to address is.
So that would lead right into a question: what are the main issues that you have to deal with here in the town of Granby?
I would say probably one of the biggest issues that we deal with, or most frequent, is traffic issues, traffic accidents. That's obviously a concern everywhere, but in Granby, with there's a lot of windy roads, and that is a big portion of what we do. We deal with a fair amount of domestic issues, and I would say probably those would probably be the biggest issues. And we also have a fair number of different types of sexual assaults, from indecent assault and batteries to rape involving children, adults, things like that. We have a fair amount of that as well.
When I look at the Gazette, I don't seem to see those come up on the list of issues. Are those are reported differently than?
There are a lot of privacy issues when we start to talk about sexual assaults and rapes and things like that. So for those reasons, we can't really put out the same type of information we do for, say, a housebreak and things like that, for the obvious privacy nature behind it. So you will not see that. You will see it in bare statistics at the end of the year. You won't see the type of detail that you will on some of the other less private crimes.
What do you feel are your major challenges here in Granby, both with the police force in general and for you as the chief?
I think they're both somewhat the same. I think for the police department, the biggest issue is trying to provide a service that the town needs and that they want with shrinking budgets. And that's not, we don't have the monopoly on the shrinking budget. That's every other budget in town, and residents as well. Everybody is trying to tighten their belts, and it's understandable. It just becomes very difficult when it's year after year of trying to shrink that budget. And we're in a service-related, personnel-heavy cost budget, and when something happens that's outside of what you can possibly plan for, it has a dramatic effect on your budget, and even more so when the budget is so tight already that there's no flex in it. So I think trying to provide the same level of service, or even a higher level of service that the town needs and requires, with the very tight budget requirements that we all have. I think that would answer both of those questions.
Okay, yes. Well then, perhaps what might be misconceptions that the town folks of Granby might have about our police department?
Misconceptions. Well, I think maybe one of the biggest misconceptions could possibly be, and I'm kind of taking a fair amount of assumption, is that traffic-related procedures or enforcement rather, is this just there to be a nuisance to people? And I think one of the things that people should really kind of look at when it comes to traffic-related situations is even past the traffic safety issue. A fair amount of crimes are discovered through motor vehicle stops, and more importantly, a fair amount of crimes are prevented when towns proactively provide traffic enforcement. If you were somebody who was coming to look to commit a crime, to break in someone's house, and you knew it was more likely than not that you were going to be stopped in Granby, you may move on to another town. So I think there's certainly other benefits to traffic enforcement, and I think that's probably one of the misconceptions. I think the other misconception is that law enforcement is all that we do. We do quite a bit more than that. We respond to every medical call. A lot of times we're the first ones there, only because our officers are already on the road. We respond to every fire call. We're very lucky that we have the fire department and ambulance people that we do. They're very professional, and they respond very quickly. We respond to everything like that. And furthermore, we are the only 24-hour agency in town, so we have some responsibilities for the highway department in terms of calling them out. We have responsibilities for the dog officer. We dispatch the fire department and ambulance service 24 hours a day. So all of the services, some way or another, rely on us, as do we them, which I would imagine most small agencies, small towns do the same. So those are some of the things that I would imagine the public doesn't see. And when you're the only 24-hour agency in town and you need something done in the middle of the night, the only place that you can call that someone's going to answer is the police department. So we end up taking care of a fair amount of things that I would imagine most or larger departments wouldn't take care of. And that's what we're here for, and that's what we try to do. Anytime we can accommodate somebody, we will. So that's probably another misconception.
Well, that certainly anticipates another question that I would have about what you'd want the folks in Granby to take away from our interview. So I think you've preempted that very nicely. Chief, with all the stuff that's been in the news lately, this terrible tragedy down in Connecticut, how does that affect our department? How does that affect the way we think about our schools and the safety of our citizens?
Well, I think first of all, the police department, its officers, its personnel, they're people first, and so there's obviously an emotional effect when something like that happens. You can't help but think about your own family, think about the kids that you're responsible for in the community, things like that. So it certainly has an effect here, and in terms of what we have done in regards to that, we have a school resource officer in the high school. He's there 5 days a week. We've also increased our presence at both the other schools as well. We meet on a regular basis with the school and the fire department to discuss security issues and safety issues and response issues. Our school resource officer works hand in hand with the schools to work on lockdown drills and things of that nature. So there's really a collaborative effort in trying to ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep our kids safe. And when something like this happens, a horrible tragedy, an unexplainable event like that, you can't help but think, what can we do better? And we've had meetings, and we've looked at procedures, and we've increased our presence as much as we can. So you can't help but be affected by that, both personally and professionally. And it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy that is just never going to be explained. There's no reasonable explanation for it. So that has been our response to it, is to kind of look in the mirror and see what we can do.
The resource officer that's at the high school, is that an armed officer?
He is.
Okay. And obviously one of our either full-time or part-time officers?
Yes, the school resource officer now is a full-time officer. He's fully trained. He's been to several other trainings in and around school security, school assessments, emergency management procedures, things like that. And even short of this security issue, the security of having a police officer there, one of the things I would like the public to know is the most important part of that title is resource. Because one of the things with that position is that he is a huge resource, not just to the police department, but to the school staff, to parents, to the students themselves. There are so many things that, and I don't mean in terms of safety and issues, just in terms of safety issues, but that are averted. He's privy to things that happen outside of the school. He has the information about things that happen in school, and if we didn't have that relationship with the school, the students, and the staff, even the parents, we wouldn't necessarily be able to help and say, okay, well, the reason this happened in school today was because something happened last night. And there's a huge communication block that is just eliminated by having him there. And so when we talk about the school resource officer, I'm not exactly sure where that name came from or where that title actually started, but I can tell you that in our system, in the community of Granby, that it could not be more true a title than anything else. He is a resource to the families. He's a resource to the school. He's certainly a resource to the police department. And if there's any parents out there who hear this that have any issues that they think the school resource officer can help with, they should absolutely call him at the school or call here, and we will certainly put them in touch with him.
So it sounds pretty clear to me that both this officer and the whole police force is a community resource, that you're integrated tightly into this community and really feel like you're a part of the community.
I think certainly in a small community, as I would refer to Granby, the police department has to be part of the community, not just a reflection of what we respond to, but a part of the community in so much as our families are here. We know it's a small community. People know us. There's very few people in town that I would say don't know at least one or two officers on a first name basis. Our kids go to school together. They play sports together. They're on the same committees. They have different arguments at town meeting. Difference of opinion, which is always great. But we have to be part of the community, and I think especially in a small town, the police department can't stand alone. We can do nothing by ourselves. So even when we talk about preventing crime or solving crimes, the community is the eyes and ears of the police department. We will never get anything done. We'll never be successful if we don't have the cooperation with the community. That's just the reality. So if you see something happen, it's incredibly important to call us right away. Don't wait. You're never going to be a burden. It's never a hassle. We need to. The quicker we know, the quicker we can respond. And that's a huge part of answering the question I think that you posed, is that we can't do it by ourselves. And so in that statement, I think it just bears the example, it shows the example that we are part of the community, and if we're not, we're just not going to be successful. So that kind of leads me right into the two things that I was hoping to mention was, if you see a crime or you see something suspicious, trust your instincts, trust your gut. If it doesn't seem right, your neighborhood better than anybody, call, because it probably isn't right. If something's out of the ordinary, just call. We'll check on it. If it ends up being nothing, it ends up being nothing. The second thing that I would say, please, please, please lock your doors in your car, lock your doors to your home. And it doesn't necessarily ring true with the house, but I can say specifically that I do not remember the last time a vehicle was broken into where the doors were locked. Doesn't say that doesn't happen, but it's been a long time. Most of our vehicle breaks are vehicles that have been left open, unlocked, some with the keys in them. So we have to, that's one of the things that we can do to help protect ourselves. So.
What about those folks who go into shops and leave their cars running outside?
Yeah, I would not advise that. I know it's cold, especially today. I think it's somewhere in the single digits, which nobody wants to get in a warm, cold car, that is. But again, not a safe thing to do. There's obviously some idling laws as well that prevent you from idling your vehicle over believe it's 5 minutes or so. So that's a good point. Not a great thing to do, but I understand that people don't want to be cold either. But don't leave your car running.
Right. Chief Wisher, thanks so much for talking to us today. Maybe you and I could do one more thing afterward, and that's take a look at a cruiser, because I'd like to see all the gadgets that you have inside and understand a little bit more about them.
That would be great. That would be great. We can do that, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Terrific. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'm here today with Sergeant Mark Smith, who is going to demonstrate what's in one of our Granby cruisers. Hello, Sergeant Smith.
Good afternoon.
Hi there. Can you tell me what kind of equipment is common to a cruiser here in Granby?
Well, amongst the standard stuff, I mean, obviously, like everyone knows, we have all kinds of controls. We have lights for every occasion, meaning that we got a whole switch panel here that we can do different things that we have to deal with, whether it's front lights, rear lights, all kinds of lights, turning them down, stuff like that. We have two different radios. We have our department radio that we communicate with the department, with the fire department in local areas. We also have a second radio that's in here, which is the WIMLAC radio, which gives us access to surrounding departments throughout the Commonwealth.
And you have your own personal radio there.
Yes, and on top of that, we have one that we carry with us when we get out of the cruiser to have the same types of communications.
Right. So you can communicate with the fire department and other public service folks around the area.
Yes, we can.
All right. Terrific. So tell us more about some specific equipment in the cruiser.
Well, the additional equipment that we have is we have up on the dashboard here, and you see this black cylinder here. We have a radar unit that we use. That's used for the obvious. We detect traffic speeds when we're doing enforcement in different locations. It gives us a confirmation, if you will, of the speed that people may be traveling at on the roadways.
Okay.
We use that in conjunction with us. I mean, the whole history of radar is our visual observation of what traffic is, and the radar unit itself is designed, or by nature is to confirm what we suspect as the approximate speed of vehicles. Again, this is the head that actually takes in the speed. Right here we have on the dashboard is the unit that gives us the readout of what the traffic may be traveling at.
Got it. What else have you got there?
Well, along with that, it's come a long way since I started. Now we actually have, right here, we have a mobile data unit that is hooked up to our communication center and the registry of motor vehicles. So if we have questions on different registrations on vehicles or people that we're dealing with, that information can be added into this laptop here. And now, instead of going through dispatch to get the information, we have an access point here of getting information immediately of who we're dealing with. This works in conjunction with dispatch. It's not going to eliminate that factor, but a lot of times when we're on the road or if we're on the side of the street monitoring traffic, what we tend to do is we'll put in motor vehicle registration numbers here, especially if they appear to be not registered any longer by the little stickers that are in the plate indicating that they should have been re-registered. We can put that information into this laptop while we're sitting on the side of the roadway and find out pretty much almost immediately if the car has been re-registered, and it's just a case of someone forgot to put the sticker on.
Okay. So it gives you an access point right here for instantaneous information.
Yes.
Okay. What about other things that are easily at hand for you in the front of this cruiser?
Well, that's pretty much for here. Inside the cruiser here, for more of a control point, we also have, each one of the marked cruisers has a rifle that's securely mounted in the cruiser. It's locked. So it's another tool that we have within the cruiser.
It is locked, so someone couldn't jimmy the door of the cruiser and walk off with your rifle.
No, absolutely not. Even if someone was to, say, break into the cruiser, no, it has its own locking mechanism to prevent any such theft.
Okay, well, that's important to know. Since you I don't mean you specifically, but the police department are frequently the first responders to all sorts of calls. What else do you carry in the cruiser?
All of the cruisers on the department, because we are first responders, and generally we're already on the road in most cases, so we do get to most calls first, just by nature of the fact that we're on the road patrolling. So within each one of the cruisers, we all have medical bags. Inside the medical bags is your oxygen unit. We have different oxygen masks. We have different first aid supplies that are ready to us. Each cruiser also carries the defibrillators for medical use to that use. So we carry a wide range of emergency medical equipment that we can use when we get to the scene. So we can start first responder, we can start the first aid as we wait for the arrival of the Granby Ambulance Fire Department personnel.
That's fantastic to know. All right. Well, Sergeant Mark Smith demonstrating for us the cruiser, one of our cruisers from Granby, and the equipment that's carried in a cruiser. Sergeant Smith, thank you very much for your time.
You're absolutely welcome.
We're here with our school resource officer, Officer James White, who's going to talk to us about his duties at our schools. Officer White?
Morning.
Good morning. How about doing just that? Give us a sense of what you do at our schools and what that really means for our students and their families.
Sure. The school resource officer does acts in a lot of different capacities in the school. First and foremost, my priority there is the school security, the security of both the students and the staff at the 3 schools here in town. But beyond that, I also work to break down those typical barriers between law enforcement and the community, and being a part of the students' lives on a day-to-day basis. And it's an opportunity to get to see them grow up from a young age and mature into adults. And it also gives the department an opportunity to be a part of that growth. And the kids get to see police officers from when they're very early start in school up until they graduate. And I think with that comes a lot of other different roles that we take on. We work with the guidance department on both academics or on just the issues that a student goes through on their day-to-day basis. We work with the school administration. I also play an active role with the athletic department, get involved in school sports. So, we try to get involved as much as we can in every part of a student's life, and then just be a resource to both the student and their parents.
Okay, that sounds great. For you to be the school resource officer, did you have to undergo any special training, or is this just something that fits your personality and sense of commitment?
Yeah, I did go to a school specifically for school resource officers, and got certified to become a school resource officer.
And what were the special things that you learned or studied there?
It was a pretty involved class that touched on just how to approach the job. It's a completely different job from working the road or patrol, which I worked previous to becoming a school resource officer. So it kind of just gave us some tools and tactics to use on our start. And like anything, you kind of figure it out as you do it more and get a sense of what works. And talking with different school resource officers in different towns and agencies, the job is different from town to town. So the instructor at the school was a school resource officer for several years in a big city department, so he was able to give us some of his experiences and and different tactics and situations that he had to deal with. I was able to use those at my start, and as years progressed, we've kind of made this position our own here in town, and I think it's much different than it is in other towns.
How many years have you done it?
This is my 4th year.
Oh, so you're really a pro at it then, I suspect. So if a parent wanted to talk to you about a specific issue, how would they contact you?
There's several different ways. The best would be you could contact me at the school. You could access my phone number either through the police department website, or the high school, Granby Junior Senior High School website.
And they would just look up Officer James White?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You could also email me. My email is also can be found in the same place.
Okay, that sounds great.
I also have a voicemail at the police department.
So a lot of different ways to get in touch with you.
That's right.
I guess a question that everyone might have relates to the terrible tragedy that happened in Connecticut, and whether that has altered our thinking here in Granby about security at our schools. How would you respond to that?
It certainly brings awareness to it, but at the police department, that's something that we think about on a daily basis. I think school shootings happen and have happened, unfortunately, for years now, and certainly not at the level as they happen in Connecticut. But it brings a lot of awareness to the general public. But at the police department, that's something that we take serious and think about day to day. We have implemented already several different security measures that we practice and drill on a regular basis. So we have revisited some of our safety protocols in light of the tragedy in Connecticut. But for the most part, we just try to stay consistent in training and working with the schools.
So it sounds like we're prepared for whatever might happen, with the hope that all of us would have, that nothing ever does happen.
I'd like to think we're as prepared as we can be. So those are horrible situations involving active shooters, and they're very difficult to. They're a very difficult thing to approach. So all you can do is develop a plan, implement it, and practice it. Make sure everybody is familiar with it, and if God forbid a time comes where you need to use it, people are familiar with it, and it's not something new.
Okay, we've been talking with Officer James White, our school resource officer, and Officer White, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
No problem, thank you.
I'm here with Chief Wishart in the dispatch room right now. Chief, walk me through it.
Well, this is the area of our station where our dispatcher is manned. This dispatch center is manned 24 hours a day by a dispatcher. So when someone dials 911 from a home phone, the phone will come in. The call will come directly in here. The dispatcher will take the phone call. It'll also give us the location on a map of where that call is actually coming from. We would actually see that here. The phone call would come in, and we would see the address of the caller or the location of the caller up on the map.
And now that's only for a landline? A cell phone wouldn't show up on there, would it?
Right now, cell phones are routed through the state police. So if you call on a cell phone, more likely than not, it's going to go to the state police. Then they're going to transfer it to us. So that doesn't necessarily come here right now.
But if we called on our main resourced phone line or wherever it is, you get it right there on the screen.
If you call from any landline number, 911, it is going to be picked up here in Granby. If for some reason, say all of our lines are busy, or the dispatcher can't answer it for some reason, it rolls over to a backup police department, for instance, South Hadley, And then there's just a chain of how it would go. For instance, if South Hadley was inundated, it would then go to Belchertown. So there's several different backups upon that. But when you call 911, generally speaking, from your home phone in Granby, this is where the call will come. It'll come into one of our dispatchers here in the public safety complex.
Great.
So all of the dispatch responsibilities for the police department, EMS services, and the fire department are all housed here. We also monitor some of the schools' cameras as well. Up in the top left-hand corner, we have the high school, and there's also right now the East Meadows up there right now. We're working on getting the other school cameras as well. So everything in this room is basically new with the building. All of the furniture that you see, all the desks, all the storage furniture, even the chairs were all purchased with grant money, so it didn't cost the town a dime. And it's certainly a huge upgrade from where we were in the old station. Our radio system now we have a repeater that's off-site. We also have a backup radio repeater here on-site. Both of them are backed up by generators. Certainly the one here is on a backup generator, as is the one that's stationed outside of the station as well. We never had that before. That's huge when it comes to making sure that we can communicate with our officers, the fire department, the police department, other police departments as well. So it's certainly been a huge upgrade, and with that upgrade came a huge increase in public safety.
Terrific. Okay, great. Let's keep going.
Okay.
We're here with our Granby canine officer, Kurt Carpenter, and the business end of this duo, Ralph. Kurt's going to tell us what he does and how he does it, and how Ralph is a fantastic part of what we have here in Granby. Kurt, you're on.
Why, thank you. Again, my name is Officer Kurt Carpenter. I've been lucky enough to be with the town for the last 10 years. For the last 7, I've actually had the pleasure of working with my partner Ralph here. Ralph is about a 60-pound black lab who was actually imported from Swansea, Wales in the UK solely to do police work. There's some differences in the way he is treated than a regular pet, and that is because of the way he acts. Any of you who have seen him in the community will be able to tell that he is extremely hyper all the time. He sees me outside of the car, as you can hear, he gets excited. When Ralph and I work, Ralph is not necessarily looking for narcotics. What Ralph is looking for is actually a simple PVC pipe. That's a good boy, huh? 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 So, what you could see is we went along the side of the fire engine to the back of their rescue vehicle. Ralph goes along, and everywhere I touch my hand to, he puts his nose. As we went to the fire truck, the rescue truck, I introduced the rear bumper of the vehicle. Ralph's nose touches it, his breathing goes silent, he begins to hop, sits down, and he will not move from that spot until he's rewarded. If you watch, I keep moving. The reason I keep moving is I want to try to pull him away. One of the things that he will not do is he will not leave that scent until he's rewarded. That's one of the ways to know that he's not just playing with us.
And you rewarded him with the PVC
And then you
pipe.
receive him with the PVC pipe.
Got it.
Because in his mind, what happens is he smells his pipe, he tells me where his pipe is, and then lo and behold, oh my gosh, my pipe appears. So what we actually did was we had put out, and you can see he's getting excited again, he thinks there's another pipe in here, a bag with 2 little baggies in it of marijuana. So, and you can actually watch, he doesn't know what the smell is because the game's over to him. He's not paying any attention to the bag. The game's over. He has his pipe. Now it's just time to play. See, you can
That
shows no interest in it whatsoever.
That is absolutely
buddy.
incredible.
Buddy. So if you'd like, let's take a walk back to the cruiser now, and I can show you some of the modifications that were actually done to accommodate Ralph.
Fantastic. Let's do it. Okay, we're looking at modifications now to the cruiser that Officer Carpenter and Ralph patrol in. Okay?
So starting in the back is probably the easiest modifications that were done. They're actually, the springs to the trunk were actually had to be, they can be adjusted, and they're extremely tense now. The tension was brought up on them. And what that's for is because I have extra equipment that most other cruisers don't have. We had to have a chain link put across the top, and what that's for is it actually holds Ralph's equipment. We have his tracking harness. We actually have his bulletproof vest that we have unfortunately had to use on a couple occasions, and then spare leashes, a 50-foot tracking harness, and then what's called a traffic harness. Along with that is anything I may need in case we have to go into the wilderness. I have a camel pack, bright orange fluorescent for Ralph, and I also keep an extra case of water in the trunk at all times.
Okay.
Then moving on.
A bulletproof vest for Ralph that you've had to use, you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's had to use it.
He's had to
We've
use
actually gone into. What's that? We actually, this was donated from a company called Vested Interest in Canine. You can actually look them up online. It's a 100% nonprofit organization, and all of their vests that they supply to canines throughout Massachusetts and now countrywide are all taken from donations made by the public.
Okay.
The modifications that were done to the back seat of the cruiser are actually the back seat has been completely removed, and there's an actual kennel that is put in the back for him. The reason that this is used is, if you notice, everything is flat on the ground, and then leading to the back, Ralph's right at home. Come on. Then leading to the back, everything works at angles. So if, God forbid, we are ever in a car crash, Ralph will actually, the impact he will take to the side will actually be negated by the angles that are of the kennel. Braces have been put on the windows,
Right.
and also a high output fan was put in to keep Ralph cool
Right.
in the summertime. And then also, because he is my buddy, there is a door that separates the two that as we're patrolling I can actually slide open so he can come visit
In the front seat.
right into the front seat. Yeah.
Got it.
So he can come visit me. And then also there's a water bowl that attaches up to the top of the screen for him.
So, Officer Carpenter, how intimidating is a dog if you get in a situation that's aggressive or confrontational?
I can't speak for most dogs, just because this is what I have, because Ralph is what I have. This is what the town of Granby needs for a police dog. I tell everybody the most dangerous part of this dog is actually his tail, because he gets so excited when he whacks you in the shins, it hurts. But you can take anything you want out of his mouth. I have 3 small children at home that feed him on a regular basis, including taking food right off of his tongue. And you do not have to worry about this dog becoming angry at somebody.
What I mean though, if you're confronting someone that you want to calm down,
Yeah.
How helpful is it to have a dog?
Just the presence of having a dog, whether it's a 50-pound lab or whether it's a 100-pound German Shepherd, can in itself de-escalate a situation. Whether they see him or not, just the presence has the ability to de-escalate a situation.
Great. Thank you very much, Ralph, and thank you, my man. You've
Thank
been
you, bud.
terrific.
Thank you, bud.
Yes, bud. I wonder if they'd like it better if I put a little cinnamon and allspice on the pumpkins.